Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parirajikacharya Asasata Sisiman. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parirajikacharya Asasata Sisiman. His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Brihat Mridanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Like go to Premanandi. All glorious to the assembly of devotees. All glorious to the assembly of devotees. All glorious to the assembly of devotees. All glorious to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jair Mudirayet Naisupraya Subhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 17, text number 28. Yeah, 4:17:28. Evam manyu mayam murtim Kritantam Eva Devrata Pranata Prajali Praha Mahi Sajata Vepatu Evam Manu Mayim Murtim Kritantam Eva Devrata Pranata Prajali Praha Mayi Sajata Vepatu Evam Manu Mayim Murtim Kritantam Eva Devrata Pranata Prajali Praha Mahi Sajata Vepatu Tantam Evabitvatam Devrata Nishanja Vajipatu Evam Manu Mayim Murtim Kritatantam Evabitvatam Pranata Pranjali Praha Mayi Sanjata Vepatu Evam Manu Mayim Murtim Tam Eva Marpratam Anjali Praha Maya Murtim Marpratam Anjali Praha Chandra Patu Evam thus Mayu Mayim very much angry Murtim form Krita Antam death personified Yamaraj Eva like Bipratam possessing Pranata surrendered Pranjali with folded hands Praha said Mahi the planet Earth Sajata arisen Vepatu trembling in her body. Translation. At this time, Prithu Maharaj became exactly like Yamaraj, and his whole body appeared very angry. In other words, he was anger personified. After hearing him, the planet Earth began to tremble. She surrendered and with folded hands began to speak as follows. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is death personified to miscreants, and the Supreme Beloved Lord to the devotees. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Mrityum sarvaharsa chaham. I am all devouring death. Faithless unbelievers who challenge the appearance of God will be delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when He appears before them as death. Hiranyakashipu, for example, challenged the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Lord met him in the form of Nishimadev and killed him. Similarly, the planet Earth saw Maharaj Prithu as death personified, and she also saw him in the mood of anger personified. Therefore she began to tremble. One cannot challenge the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in any circumstance. It is better to surrender unto him and take his protection at all times. Om Ajnanitimidandasya Gananjana Shalakoya Chakshurun Minitam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadantmayam Dadanti Svam Patantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradata Sagana Raghunath Vitam Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Shri Vishakam Svitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopeshwar Gopikad Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarum Vistya Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashchatyadi Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So with the permission of Devrata Prabhu, Ramapati, and all senior Vaishnavas, I beg to speak something beneficial. I was listening to a class by His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu yesterday, and he was talking about being connected to the parampara means hearing from the parampara. It's not through some electrical shock, it's from hearing. And in his book, The Process of Inquiry, Gaur Govinda Maharaj talks about how the kirtan of the disciple is also the shravanam of the disciple, because he's simply repeating what he's heard from his spiritual predecessors. So in that mood, I hope that I can say something beneficial to myself and all assembled Vaishnavas, and ultimately I can say something just as an offering to my spiritual master, to Krishna, and to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we see in this verse this idea of reciprocation appearing. This idea of reciprocation appearing. And we see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. And this is not only applicable to devotees, but it's applicable to everyone, because everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. Mama ishvam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. That we're all part and parcels of Krishna. So everyone has a relationship with Krishna, and everyone's relating with Krishna in a certain capacity. And generally, when Prabhupada would speak about the different classes of human beings, he would categorize the classes of human beings as karmis, jnanis, and yogis, and bhaktas. And he said that all of the four, the best was the bhakta. So as I was putting together this class, I started to think, well, why is the bhakti the best? And we're gonna try to explore that topic, and then we're also gonna explore a topic when we come to the realization that we're bhakta, that's the highest position. Where do we go from there? So, why are the bhaktas considered the best? This is an important question that we should think about, because if we're taking up the process of Krishna consciousness, we should accept what the authority says, but we should also deliberate on it and try to develop some realization ourselves, and not just have it be a sentimental thing. It should be grounded in sound philosophy. So, since time immemorial, we've been passing through different species of life, 8,400,000. And for the most part, when we're passing through these different variations of bodies, it's kind of an automatic process. It's going, like the fly doesn't have to think about becoming a mosquito. The mosquito doesn't have to think about becoming a bumblebee. It's very automatic. The laws of nature are kind of just carrying the living entity through these different forms of life. And as one begins to progress, the progression of consciousness is more or less expanding the sphere of control that a particular living entity can have. So like animals, for instance, they're just kind of focused on their bodily necessities. But then the human being, they have the ability to change their environment around them. Whereas animals, they can change to a certain degree, but human beings to a very large degree have a larger sphere of control. But the Vedas say that the human form of life isn't meant for simply just expanding the sphere of control. And actually our whole philosophy is giving up this expansion of this sphere of control and coming to realize our subordination to higher power, higher authorities at work. So this process of transmigration, it's coming with different varieties of self-identification. And they're described as Adi Bhautika, Adi Atmaka, and Adi Devika. These are different levels of identification that one can identify with. Often when we hear these terms, we identify them with like types of suffering. But in this book, Process of Inquiry, is also saying that this is also a form of self-identification. And so these different forms of self-identification is Adi Atmaka, is identification with the body and mind. So generally, when we're if we look at karmis, they're mostly absorbed in this platform of the body and mind. And they're concerned with the needs of the body and mind. And basically everything that they do in their reality, their use of free will is engaged in maintaining the body and mind. And then if we go to the jnanis, they have an understanding of spirit, but their way that they're trying to approach spirit is through a material formula. So they're also existing with a material self-identification. And then we look at yogis, they're trying to manipulate the material energy in a very large way. So once again, they're existing on a material platform of identification. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in his Brahma Samhita, I think everyone knows that first line of Brahma Samhita. The materialistic demeanor cannot approach the transcendental autocrat. And so what that means is that with our material senses and with our material self-identification, we can't possibly begin to understand Krishna. Because we're so limited and Krishna is so unlimited, if we try to do it through our own endeavor, it's not possible. So the devotees are wonderful because they are developing the self-identification of Adi Devika, which is understanding that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. So this identification of being an eternal servant of Krishna is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So the devotees are hearing and they're accepting what Krishna says. So this is what makes the devotees glorious, because they're not depending on any material arrangement. They're not depending on their own instruments or tools. They're simply surrendered to the words of Krishna, and they accept those words. And through accepting those words, they apply it through their activity. They use their independence in a correct way. There's a correct way to use our independence, and there's an incorrect way to use our independence. And when we refuse to identify ourselves as a devotee of Krishna or as a servant of Krishna, then one has to identify with the body and mind. There's no question about it. Once we reject being a servant of Krishna, I'm a Krishna Das, then immediately one has to be under the control of the body and mind. So the body and mind is, I'm from this country, I'm from this religion, I'm this color, I'm this color. And this is why we see so much tension in the world. Fierce competition for limited resources based on the false identification with the body and mind. So, according to the degree we are identifying ourselves as a devotee of Krishna or as a servant of Krishna, and we have realization of this, to that degree we'll be free from the understanding that I have anything to do with this body or mind. And so this is actually how one can begin to understand Krishna in truth. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, that in order to understand him, you have to if one wants to return to him, one has to understand him in truth. So in order to understand Krishna, first we have to understand ourselves. And actually they go side by side. It's just like when the sun rises in the morning, not only does one see the sun rising, but one begins to see everything else around them properly. So this understanding that I'm a servant of Krishna and everything that's related to being a servant of Krishna falls under the category of sambandha. And in order to make progress in spiritual life, we have to have a strong foundation of sambandha gyan, which is knowledge that's imparted by the spiritual master, and it involves who we are in relationship to Krishna, who we are in relationship to the material energy, and who we are in relationship to everyone else. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Tattva Mula Dasa, he gives a very intricate list of these topics that fall under the category of sambandha gyan. One can study these, become more proficient in the topic. But also simply studying Prabhupada's books, there's such sufficient knowledge in regards to who we are in relationship to Krishna and everything else around us, that if one makes a thorough study and dedicates a good portion of their time to reading Prabhupada's books and imbibing, which literally means to drink in. Imbibe means to drink in the knowledge. And when you drink something, it gets uploaded in, or it gets taken into your bloodstream and then pervades throughout your body. So similarly, when we drink in this knowledge from Prabhupada's books, it begins to imbibe our consciousness. And this gives us a firm foundation in sambandha, which is important because without that firm foundation in sambandha, our abhideya and our prayojana will be faulty. Our understanding of what the process to achieve the goal is and what the goal is will be faulty. It's just like a jnani. They see themselves as not a servant of Krishna, so their process and their goal is completely faulty. And Prabhupada brings up this point. I'm just going to read something real quick, just because it really illuminates this point in a great way, that if one doesn't understand who they are and who Krishna is, then the process and the goal will be faulty. It will just be a confusion. So this is from a lecture that Prabhupada gave on Srimad Bhagavatam, on the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 32nd verse in Bombay on December 2nd. So he says, Bhakti means the business between Bhagavan and Bhakta. That is Bhakti. If there is no Bhagavan, then where is Bhakti? And where is Bhakta? If Bhagavan is zero, I'll just add something. That's like the Jnani's conception. They don't see Krishna as being a person. They just see it as like an all-pervasive energy. So there's no reciprocation. There can't be any Bhakti. If Bhagavan is zero, then where is Bhakti? Bhakti means the transaction between Bhagavan and Bhakta. Just like here, the Bhagavan is there, and Bhaktas are there. And the transaction is dressing the Bhagavan, feeding the Bhagavan, chanting the Bhagavan's names, calling people to hear about Bhagavan, to publish books about Bhagavan. This is Bhakti. Bhakti Bhagavati, simply in relation with Bhagavan, no other business. Animita, without any material desire. So, if we really want to receive Krishna's mercy, we have to be convinced at this point that the highest truth is that I am an eternal servant of Krishna. So, Without this understanding, real bhakti can't take place. If we're not established in this understanding that I'm a servant of Krishna, it will be mixed. It will be mixed with karma or jnana, and that offering that we're giving to Krishna will be mixed with an ulterior motive. It won't be 100% there. So because the bhakti accepts Krishna as the truth and himself as a servant of Krishna, he can accept the process of bhakti, which means that he can accept the proper abhideya and he can accept the proper prayojana. The abhideya is our sadhana that we have, chanting Hare Krishna, addressing the deity, giving Krishna's knowledge, Krishna culture to other people. And the goal is Vraj Bhakti. That's what our goal is. That's what's very unique about the tradition that we're in, is that we're not going for Vaikuntha. We're not going for any material planet. We're interested in the highest thing. Not even just in... Yeah, we're interested in the highest thing. We're interested in Vraj Bhakti, and not only Vraj Bhakti, we're looking for the highest mellow of love in Vraj Bhakti. That's Mahaprabhu's mercy. This is explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the 4th chapter. The whole thing is just about Mahaprabhu's internal reason and his external reason, how they're interrelated. The 3rd and 4th chapter. So this is what we're looking for. In Bhakti, there's many understandings of how you could categorize it. There's Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Those are the 9 processes of Bhakti. But also Bhaktivedanta Thakur, he has a book called Sharanagati, and he gives 6 limbs of Bhakti. And I like these because they're very simple to remember, and they're very applicable. They're very practical things that we can apply to our life. Those 6 things are accepting Krishna, rejecting everything accepting everything favorable and rejecting everything unfavorable for Krishna's service. Accepting Krishna as one's protector, as one's maintainer, always depending on the will of Krishna, and always feeling oneself meek and humble. So these are powerful tools that we can use in our life. That's 6. Because the two accepting everything favorable and rejecting everything unfavorable, those are 2 separate in a way. Krishna is my maintainer, Krishna is my protector, depending on the will, and meek and humble. So I was listening to a class the other day by Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, and he was talking about this, the process of bhakti and the change of heart that the process of bhakti should bring out. So now that we've accepted that I'm supposed to be a bhakta, where do we go from there? What does that mean? In the class that Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj was making, is that when one comes to understand that Vishnu is the supreme goal, that Krishna is the supreme goal, that it's no longer just an automatic evolution. It requires a force of consciousness. It requires a force of us being aware of our development in Krishna consciousness. And what will curtail our progress in Krishna consciousness is when we're lazy in the process of developing divine qualities. It's all Krishna's mercy, but there has to be an effort on our part, a conscious effort. So he was speaking on that verse in the 2nd canto about the change of heart. If one is chanting Hare Krishna but their heart doesn't change, then they should be considered to have a steel frame heart. And he gave a really wonderful discourse. He was speaking how heart in Sanskrit, it translates to chitta. And chitta in Sanskrit can also more or less mean consciousness. And within consciousness there's emotions, there's thoughts, and there's desires. So the change of heart, it literally means to change our thoughts, our emotions, and our desires. And these things, when I was meditating on it afterwards, I was thinking about Bhaktivedanta Thakur's 6 limbs of Saranagati, that our thoughts, our emotions, and our desires should harmonize with these 6 limbs of Sharanagati. And when we do that, we begin to develop a favorable disposition towards Krishna. And what he is speaking about, that the change of heart, you know that there's a change of heart taking place, is that the way we respond to things is ultimately how you know there's a change of heart taking place. The way we respond to our external environment and the things that we come in contact with to the degree that we respond in a devotional way, to that degree there's been a change of heart. And that this requires a force of consciousness. It's not that we can just be lazy and, you know, kind of go on autopilot. Because our autopilot, since time immemorial, has been pushing us into animal bodies. So it requires us to kind of, you know, take a hold of the wheel and kind of direct ourselves. So we have to be vigilant in our process of bhakti. And this idea of developing a favorable disposition in Krishna consciousness, it's ultimately the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. For so long we've been rebellious against the will of Krishna. And now, as we're coming to Krishna consciousness, we're trying to harmonize ourselves in such a way that we can align with Krishna's will and develop a favorable disposition towards Krishna, anukalena. And we see that when Krishna was entering the wrestling arena with Kamsa, this is a perfect example of reciprocation with Krishna. That there are so many different people, but according to the relationship that they had with Krishna, they were viewing Krishna in a different way. So Kamsa, for instance, he was viewing Krishna as his enemy. But the people of Raj, they were thinking of him as their most dear beloved. And the reason why Kamsa was viewing Krishna as his enemy is because he says he was fearful of Krishna. And that's because he considered Krishna his enemy. But ultimately, it's because he was ignorant of Krishna's position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now I'm kind of bringing it back to the verse, is that, you know, this point of protection is that Mother Earth in this pastime, she's been kind of resistant against Krishna for so long. I mean, against Prithu for so long. But when one surrenders to Krishna and develops an understanding that Krishna is all good, absolute, there's no question of fear against Krishna's will. One becomes innocent like a child. One just understands that everything is under the control of Krishna, and all I can do is make a conscious effort to make myself an instrument of that will. And so, if we can develop this mood of trying to change our heart and become favorably disposed towards Krishna, then similarly, just like Mother Earth she's kind of having a change of heart in this verse here, we can begin to understand that our ultimate good is in surrender to Krishna in any circumstance, regardless of what the circumstances is. Our response to every situation, external situation that we're involved in, is harmonized with one of these 6 limbs of Saranagati. And then when we do that, an amazing thing happens. We become completely blissful. We're completely in harmony with our nature, and we're completely in harmony with what Krishna wants us to do. So I think I'll open it up for discussion. We have like 10 more minutes left. So I'll just open it up for discussion. If there's anything that you heard that you appreciated, anything that you heard that you didn't like, or anything that you just want to expand the vibration on.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Yeah, you're talking about Krishna's will, and how, yeah, if we just surrender to Krishna's will, we'll be happy, and you know that's what devotees do. They just accept things as Krishna's arrangement, and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why this is making noise. So I was just reading last night that someone was asking Prabhupada about there was some war going on, and then they asked Prabhupada, well, what would you do if some bombs came? Like there was you and a bunch of devotees. What would you do if some bombs came? And then Prabhupada would say, oh well, a Krishna conscious person, they don't have any fear. They would think, oh, this bomb is coming from Krishna. Krishna must want me to die now.
Is that in Leelamrita?
I think I was reading that in Shyamasundar Prabhu's book.
Okay.
So
I've heard that before. Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah. So this is Krishna. That's what he said. This Bhama, this is Krishna.
Yeah, it's amazing how, regardless of what our circumstances are, wherever the world goes, wherever the movement goes, if we can stick to just the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting, giving Krishna consciousness to others, we always win. There's no question of any loss or diminution. If we can just stick to the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting, associating with devotees, giving Krishna consciousness to others, sticking to just these principles, well, whatever the external circumstances are, we can be completely happy. Akunda? Just ask that to me.
Yes.
Okay.
I was just thinking it was funny in the verse, nobody wants to become like their parents, but well, it's funny because Vena was just killed because he was just like death personified.
Yeah.
He was like Yamraj. That was his big problem. That was why he had to be killed off, because he was like death personified. And that's how he treated everybody. And that's why it was funny here when it's saying that Prithu Maharaja, who came about to solve the whole problem, then he's appearing like Yamaraj, like death personified. Yeah. And he saves the day. I thought that was funny.
Any reflections? Glenn? No? Damodar? Okay. Mataji's? Oh, Devrata prabhu. Uh-oh.
Just to clarify, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, these 6 principles given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur are specifically the principles of surrender. Mm-hmm. And they open the door to engaging fully in all the others. Oh. In other words, by accepting the things favorable and rejecting things unfavorable and the others, then when it comes time to hear and chant, you're more attuned to what's being heard. The ground has been plowed, so to speak, so you'll receive the seed better, and all the other processes. So that really enter into the house of bhakti by accepting these things. And what's interesting is some of them are like, any process of discipline that you want to undergo, you got to accept the things favorable for that discipline and reject the things unfavorable. So in some sense, they're universal principles. Mm-hmm. But you think about Rakshashatiti Vishwaso, this is the one I've always considered, Krishna protection. Now that's related to yoga and kshema. You remember the idea of yoga and kshema? Krishna, one who simply thinks of me, ananyas chintayanto mam, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. That preserving what they have is kshema. That's the welfare, the safety. And that's Rakshasatiti. And Vishwaso means maintaining. That's the yoga. Yoga means, in this context, everything that you need to live, So that's a big surrender. It means, being willing to live very simply, whatever Krishna provides. I've been reading the Lilamrita, how the devotees in Bombay, it was practically unbearable. So many of them just couldn't take it. The rats crawling over them, they didn't have proper food, everyone got dysentery, and Prabhupada says, yes, stay there, and some, just had to go to some other service. But those who stuck it out, Giriraj Swami became very, favored by Prabhupada. They proved their mettle, in undergoing this surrender process. So that's a daily challenge to maintain that attitude, accepting what's favorable and rejecting it. That's very painful sometimes.
It requires a force of consciousness.
Yeah. And in that context, today is the anniversary of the day Prabhupada got on the ship to come to America. And, this is like such a heroic activity, it's very dramatic. I read the Lilamrita, a lone fighter, late in life, and, who knows, it was a dangerous adventure and everything. But he accepted all of the trials and tribulations in order to serve the mission of the spiritual master and Lord Chaitanya, and Krishna gave him all, empowered him, to succeed. So that's a lesson for us. Of course, we can't imitate Prabhupada, but even in our own struggles, to do our service nicely every day and become regulated, there's this process of surrender that we need to embrace all the time. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, in regards to that in Bombay Temple, my Guru Maharaj actually gave a class using that as an analogy. He made the point that, when we first begin Krishna consciousness, we kind of invite Krishna into like a little shed in our heart that has rats and, Mr. Nair roaming about. But then we make a promise to Krishna, I'm going to build a temple for you and it's going to be really nice, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. Just give me a little bit of time. And he makes the point that just over time, that's the process of Krishna consciousness, is just gradually building that temple for Krishna to live in.
But because no money had changed hands, they'll probably do it to a business. There's no money has changed hands, the TV is still there, we still have a business. But I'm going to be safe today if we're not going to look at it. That's all.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Chai. I hope I can get all of your blessings, that I can continue to practice Krishna consciousness in a sincere way and increase that in sincerity over time. And then if I said anything offensive or incorrect, I can please be forgiven. Thank you. Hare Krishna.